let us know where you're joining us from tonight. That would be fantastic. It's great to see so many of you with us this evening. Okay, so we're going to talk about all things fostering. We'll have a little bit of a particular focus on looking after children with more complex needs, but we'll cover the whole of fostering as well within that. So let's get going. Give me a minute. Okay, so I'd just like to begin with by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respect to their elders past and present, as well as to emerging leaders. I extend my appreciation to their cultural heritage, beliefs and spiritual connection with this land. I acknowledge my gratitude that we share this land today, my sorrow for some of the costs of that sharing, and my hope and belief that we can move to a place of equity, justice and partnership together. Okay, so today we'll be exploring the answers to some common questions we hear about caring for children and young people with complex needs. We'll be looking at Life Without Barriers as an organisation. I'll tell you a bit more about us. We'll have a talk about foster care, and we'll have a chat about children in care with complex needs. And we'll also talk about the process of how to become a carer for children with complex needs and how to become a carer, generally speaking. We'll also have a look at some common questions that we often receive. So who is Life Without Barriers? Life Without Barriers is quite a large organisation. It's a national organisation. We partner with people to change their lives for the better. We support over 23,000 people in over 400 communities. Our services reach people in need across the lifespan to help them achieve their goals and maximise opportunities. So we're our head office is in Newcastle in New South Wales. That's where it all started for us. We support over 4,500 children and young people. We support over 3,000 foster and kinship carer placements. We support nearly 5,000 refugees and asylum seekers. About 6,500 people are supported through home and community care programs. We also support a lot of people with disabilities and a lot of people via the NDIS programs. We have nearly 1,800 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are supported via our programs. So as you can see, Life Without Barriers fostering is one of the things that we do. We also do lots of other things in lots of other areas. And there's a certain strength that comes with that. I think we've got a pretty good reputation within the sector. And we like to do what we do in the best possible way, which we'll talk about in a minute. If I can get my cursor in the right place. There we go. Okay, so this is the basis on which we do what we do. These are our values. Hopefully these are values that you feel that you can get on board with. If you became a foster carer for us, we'd be expecting you to be able to work within these values. So we like to build relationships. We feel that good relationships with people is kind of the basis of which all good things come from. If you haven't got good relationships with people, you're not really going to get very far. So that's the kind of the bedrock of everything that we do, really. We think we are quite imaginative, or we like to be imaginative, often within, in the area of looking after young people and trying to meet their needs. Sometimes that's about thinking outside the box, thinking about what we might do a little bit differently in order to ensure the best possible outcome for children and young people. We like to be respectful. Hopefully that's a two-way street. We like to treat you guys with respect, and hopefully that's given back to us as well. I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the relationship building. If we're not working in a respectful way, it's very difficult to build those positive relationships. We like to be responsive, so that's being quite quick in the way we do things, trying to get things done in a timely way in order to meet the needs of children. We also like to be courageous, and we certainly encourage our foster carers to do that in terms of how they advocate for children in their care, because a lot of the time the children that we look after don't have as much of a voice or as much ability to affect change as we do. So that's what we talk about in terms of being courageous. Okay, what is foster care? So foster care is for children who need time away from their family. Foster care provides a safe and supportive home where they can heal and grow. It might be for a night, a week, a year, or until a child reaches adulthood. You might hear foster care talked about as foster care or out-of-home care or family-based care. There's different types of foster care. So these are the ones that you might hear talked about. Respite care. Respite care gives children an opportunity to mix in a different social network for while their primary carer takes a short break. It's regular or occasional time spent with carers who are not the child's primary carers and is usually planned in advance. So very, well, all types of foster care is very important, but this is a very important type of foster care. It can often build in placement stability in the primary placement, and it's a really, really crucial role within the agency. Emergency or crisis care. For their own safety, children may need somewhere to stay immediately for a night or even a few weeks. The call for emergency care can happen at any hour of the day or night. So that's about being available and ready to take a young person in at very short notice with sometimes very limited information. Short to medium term foster care. While difficult situations at home are resolved or until plans for longer term care are made, children need a safe, stable caring environment where they can strengthen their family relationships so they can return home safely. So yeah, so that's a really important thing. Sometimes it's very difficult to put timescales on those short to medium term foster placements. Sometimes you might have a young person who's coming in and you might think you're going to have that person for a month or two, and that can sometimes turn into a year or two. So it's a little bit difficult to put a specific timescale in on that one. Kinship foster care, living with a relative or a close family friend can help protect the important connections a child has to their family, culture and community. It can also help children avoid the added trauma of living in an unfamiliar environment. Long-term foster care. Some children in long-term care are not expected to return to live with their family on a full-time basis. Foster carers who provide long-term care commit to parenting children toward adulthood and provide them with stability and permanency. So that's about making a commitment to look after a child on a longer-term basis until they reach adulthood. So I'll just take a quick pause there to introduce you to Kristy, who is one of our amazing foster carers. She's also a carer ambassador. She's also a Mockingbird Home Hub. I'll be a tongue twister. And she's lots of other things on the side of that. So Kristy, if you'd just like to introduce yourself.
Yep. Hi, everybody. I am Kristy, and with my husband Greg, we do quite a bit of respite care and some short-term care. We've been registered for specialist care for quite a while, but have only had some kind of almost specialist care placements previously, but we currently have a definite specialist care placement, little boy with some quite difficult medical needs that he's coping with. So I've actually spent I think 9 days out of the last fortnight in hospital with him. So you'll have to excuse me if I stumble over my words because I'm lacking sleep and brain power. But it's all worth it for when you see the connection in his eyes, and when he looks to me for comfort, you know that it's all worth it, and you're making him feel safe. So yeah, previously I was a kindy, well, I still work as a kindy teacher part-time. My husband was a teacher as well, and now works with people with disabilities doing fitness therapy. So we bring that knowledge and experience to foster care. And that's what these kids need, is people that have got other life experience that they can bring to advocating for them and caring for them. So yeah, it's really exciting to be able to actually provide that for this child.
That's perfect. Thanks, Kristy. I'm sure it's great to have you along, and I'll be phoning to you from time to time. And it's really great that while we're doing a presentation tonight, sort of specifically looking after children with complex needs. So it's great to have you on board for tonight's session. And also, might be a good opportunity for me just to say what I said at the start for those people that have recently joined us. Hopefully you can see us and hear us, but we can't see or hear you. So we do welcome your interactions, but if you could do that via the Q&A button, that would be great. And we'll try and pick up your questions if you have any as we go along. And if you haven't already, if you're able to just pop in that Q&A box where you join us from, which suburb or which postcode, that just helps us with working out where our marketing's reaching. So that'd be great if you could do that. Right, I'll carry on. So, why do children come into care? So, common reasons for children needing foster care are, sadly, if they've been subject to or party to abuse, or physical, sexual or emotional abuse. Maybe they've been subject to or party to neglect. Maybe their parents suffer with mental health conditions which prevent them from meeting their children's needs or keeping them safe. Maybe there's been parental death, or maybe the significant needs of the child are such that the parents aren't able to meet those needs, or it could be a combination of many of those things all at the same time. Okay, so what does that mean for children with complex needs? So sometimes significant needs of a child or young person might contribute to their need to enter the care system. These needs might centre around living with significant disabilities, physical or intellectual, living with significant medical conditions, displaying significant pain-based behaviours. We'll perhaps talk about that a little bit more later, or displaying problematic sexualised behaviours. Who are children in care? Children in care are aged between 0 and 17. They age out at 18. We would like our children in care to stay connected to their culture and identity. So there's often a role for foster carers there to help support young people to do that. All young people in care have families who are important to them. And again, there's a role there for foster carers to help young people maintain contact with their birth families. Children in care have all suffered trauma of some sort, and we need to be extremely mindful of that in how we care for young people. And that might look different to how we may have cared for our own children if we're fortunate enough to have our own children. And during your journey to become a foster carer, both pre-approval and post-approval, we'll spend a lot of time talking to you about how to look after children who have suffered trauma in their early life, and how to respond to that, and how to look after children appropriately. Okay, who are children with complex needs? So children have complex or high support needs when they're diagnosed with significant disabilities, diagnosed with serious medical conditions, experience a level of trauma that results in pain-based behaviours that require significant support. This can contribute to difficulties communicating their needs to others, requiring sensitive, consistent and experienced caregivers to learn new skills and form healthy healing connections. So children with complex needs are extraordinary kids. I think what I would also like to say in relation to that is that there's kind of very much a sliding scale in relation to complex needs. So you could have, children at one end of the spectrum who, have some complex needs that are quite easily managed, and then at the other end of the spectrum, where they need a lot of support and a lot of attention and a lot of input, and everything in between. So I might actually pass to you, Kristy, on this, just to perhaps have a little chat in some kind of general terms in relation to the, how you're getting on with the young person you're looking after at the moment, and what their needs are, and how you're managing that, and what the kind of support around that child looks like.
Sure. So there's the usual trauma, which means he can be very fragile emotionally. He can take the littlest thing that's not, if we're not gushy and smiling and warm, if we just talk in a normal voice, you can see him just like dissolve in fear or tears or whatever, that like he thinks he's in trouble. Even when we're just saying, you know, watch out for the step, he's like, oh no. So we've had to really be careful how we talk to him and make sure we're reassuring him every moment of the day. Thankfully, that's starting to ease as he becomes more comfortable with us, and he's learning that he's not in trouble and he's not going to be hurt if he has done something wrong. Also, there's he's been diagnosed with global delay, because his physical development, his speech, his emotional development, everything is years behind where he should be. He's 4.5, but he behaves and interacts more like a 2 to 3 year old. But already we're seeing progress in that. So I suspect that he may lose that diagnosis as such. But there's possibly some disability there that's permanent. But then he's also got some medical issues to do with his kidneys and his bladder. He's had multiple surgeries since being in our care, which, because of his trauma, it all kind of gets complicated because he and his delayed development, he's not able to explain where something hurts. So there's lots of just watching for those subtle cues and really reading him like you would a much younger child. And then it all gets confused with the trauma because he'll react to something because of his trauma and he's scared of being punished or something. And you think, oh, is he in pain? Is he unwell? Or is this just a trauma response? So I've been on the phone to all the different doctors that he's under quite a few times, saying, I'm not sure if he's fighting a UTI because of these issues, or is he just having a rough day because of his trauma background? Because I don't know him well yet, because it's only been a couple of months. So yeah, especially in those first few weeks, I was like, is this just him as a person, or is this the trauma, or is this a medical thing? Like, you know, with my own kids, I'd be like, oh, this isn't like them. I wonder if they're getting sick. Whereas with him, I'm like, I have no idea if he's getting sick or, So lots of phone calls back and forth with different specialists and doctors, visits to the GP. And to the point where we ended up in emergency, and all the nurses, when we presented, because the specialist said, nope, you need to take him in. And then everyone was like, why are you even here? This child seems fine. And then they did some blood tests and urine samples and stool samples. And then suddenly they were like, wow, this child's really sick, but he's just so used to being really sick and in pain that he just kind of got on with life, playing, chatting, whatever. So yeah, I'm really having to learn quickly how to read him and how to read his needs, to be able to keep him safe and well.
Yeah, so certainly a lot to think about, a lot to try and interpret, a lot of behaviours to try and work out what's going on for this particular young person. So yeah, I will. It sounds like you're doing a great job, Kristy, and I'll perhaps pass back to you in a minute about something else that was on my mind. But yeah, certainly talks a lot to the idea of the young people that we're looking after and thinking about the meaning behind behaviours that we see. Okay, caring for children with complex needs. So it's likely that a child with complex needs will need to attend more health or therapeutic appointments than other children. We've just been hearing about that from Kristy and the young person in her care at the moment. These appointments will also inform the creation of a child-focused plans. Such plans may include, depending on the needs of the child, there could be something around seizures, there could be something around epilepsy management plans, could be a healthcare plan, could be a medical emergency action plan, could be a complex healthcare plan, it could be a positive behaviour support plan. So there could be lots of different things in place to help support a young person depending on their needs. this may mean that carers need to consider if their current situations are flexible and responsive enough to provide the availability needed to meet the additional support needs with complex needs required. This could also include alternate schooling arrangements like part-time attendance or managing supervisions if times get tricky. So certainly more so in relation to looking after children with more complex needs, you may have to give consideration to your availability, your how much you work and that kind of thing, how much time you might have to go to appointments that to help meet the needs of the young person. That may be less of a consideration if you're looking after a child with less needs, or perhaps considered being a general foster carer. So it's just something to be mindful of, really.
Mike, can I
Yeah.
jump in?
Yeah.
There's just a few questions that have come up that I think I can answer straight away. So one is, do you get provided with all the information about a child's trauma background, medical concerns, etc.? So DCP and or Life Without Barriers will provide as much information as they can. Obviously, the more they tell us, the safer the child will be and the better cared for they'll be. But often, if they've just been removed, often there's not a lot of information. They're still trying to find out. This child, there was kind of no medical history before they were removed. But then there was lots and lots of information from the doctor's investigations in the hospital, because this child was removed and then within 2 days, I think, was admitted to hospital to work out why he was so sick, and then got sent from a regional area to Adelaide to have that stuff addressed and looked into more by specialists. So we got pages and pages of information from all of the different medical teams that were working with him. But yeah, when the doctors ask about what's his medical history, it's like, well, we've only got 3 months of history. Before that, no one really knows, because the parents aren't offering information or were oblivious to a lot of what was happening for this child. So yeah, it depends how long DCP's been involved, depends how long the child has been in foster care as to how much information there actually is.
Yeah, 100%.
And then another one, if you need agency medical support for your child, how quickly do you get the support needed? With the medical stuff, I have found that everybody is so keen to help a child in care. The doctors and nurses have given me their mobile numbers and just been like, call us if you are concerned about anything. I have really felt very supported, very much like people are available to me for any questions and any support that I need or that he needs. And with all the children, all the placements we've had over the years, the agency support workers have just been amazing. And there's a 24-hour hotline that you can call to talk to whoever's on call. But during business hours, your support worker will just be a wealth of information and a wealth of support. Some days you just need to vent and they will just listen, encourage you, remind you of the therapeutic responses, give you tools to use. As a long-term thing, can actually suggest different trainings that might help you with that particular child. So yeah, definitely get lots of support and really quickly.
That's great. Thanks, Kristy. So yeah, so I mean the information stuff is it's a bit patchy, isn't it? I think sometimes, I mean, we as an agency, we'll always share with you what we know of a young person, what we're provided with. But obviously, like Kristy says, sometimes that information may be limited, or you may not get it straight away. It might come later on, or depend on the situation. And also in terms of the support, we do, as well as the things that Kristy mentioned, we also have in-house clinicians as well who can help work with carers around looking at that trauma side of things, a lot around behaviours that young people are displaying and what that might mean and how best to respond to that. And so that's a really, really helpful service as well. But yeah, so what is our approach? We use a care model in all of our work at Life Without Barriers. It's a model that's been developed in America. It was developed for with children in residential settings, but it translates well to what we do as well. So we like to be trauma informed in what we do, which we've talked about a little bit up until now. So it's about having an understanding of why children are behaving in the way they are and what that means and what they're trying to communicate to us, and then adapting our responses accordingly. We are developmentally focused, so we like to kind of meet children where they're at in terms of what they can do, which talks as well to the competency centre side of things. So we're aware that trauma can have an impact on the way that children develop. They may be slightly behind where you would expect a child to be if they hadn't been subject to trauma. We are relationship based, so that's the, relationship comes before anything else. So we would be developing a relationship with a young person before we try to change anything. We'd also like to keep their families involved. It's very important. And we are ecologically orientated, so we give consideration to the environments that children are in as well, because that can have a big impact on children. We'll tell you a lot more about all that stuff as you go through becoming a foster carer. There's a lot of training that's involved, so that's just to give you a bit of a heads up, really. Okay, so now we get to the bit where we play a video. Now, I'll just give you the heads up. Sometimes these videos work, sometimes they don't. If it doesn't work, we'll send you a link in the emails that we send out after the presentation, but just fingers crossed. So we need carers with attributes and beliefs that we know are good for children. When caring for children with complex needs, we also need that little something extra. So a great way to demonstrate this is through sharing the first-hand experience of carers for children with complex needs. So we're going to meet Barbara. Well, hopefully we're going to meet Barbara. And she is going to tell us a little bit about her experience.
We have no sound, Mike.
Sorry guys, doesn't look like we've got any sound. So what we'll do is we'll send you the link for that in the emails that we send out after the presentation. Sorry about that. Okay, what do we look for in carers? So the attributes of a great carer, we need carers with attributes and beliefs that we know are good for children. Some of these may seem obvious, but they are not always easy to find. So you need to have plenty of time to spend with children. That's really important. You need to have a desire to want to help children return safely home to their families, if that's the plan for them to do so. You need to believe in children. All children would do well if they get the right help, care and support. Yeah, so I believe that's every child's intention, is to do well. If you have a desire to share your home and your resources with children who need help. If you like trying to understand why children do things. If you can help a child manage tough feelings of missing their family. If you believe it is important that children feel included in your family when they are in foster care. So if you kind of can get on board with all of those things, then chances are you're the sort of person we're looking for. You also need to have a great deal of patience and understanding, acceptance and availability, commitment, a flexible approach, time to give, and a commitment to maintaining and strengthening family relationships. Okay, so what else is important for carers of children with complex needs? So availability we've kind of already touched upon. Flexibility, so it's about adapting to things that every day is different when you're looking after a young person. There'll always be new challenges. You need to have a strong support network. You need to have good people around you. You need to have people that you can call up and have a chat to when things might be not going your way. We need to be able to advocate on behalf of children in your care. I mean, I'm sure Kristy's done plenty of that over the years. You need to be open to learning. It's a continuous journey for all of us involved in fostering and looking after children. I don't think anyone ever gets to the point where they think they know it all. I certainly don't. You need to have some experience of working with or caring for children. You need to have some experience of working with or caring for people living with disabilities. Yeah, and ideally you have some experience of working with or caring for medical needs. All of these things can be looked at in more detail within the assessment process. Okay, who can be a carer? So it's likely that you can. Carers can be partnered or single, with or without children, from all backgrounds and all cultures. Your ability to care for and nurture a child is what really matters. So you need to be over 25 with relevant life experience. You need to be well and healthy. You need to have a regular source of income or not reliant upon the income from fostering. You can be from any culture, faith, ethnicity, religion, sexuality or gender identity expression. You can be single or in a relationship. You need to be willing to undergo background checks. In relation to your home and your family, you can be with or without your own children. You can rent or own your own house. You do need to have a spare room in your home. And everyone in your household needs to be on board and willing to be involved in fostering and the process of becoming foster carers. So how do you become a foster carer? So the process of becoming a carer for children with complex needs is much the same as all foster carers. However, some additional considerations and additional training might be necessary. So if after this presentation you go away and you think, yes, I really want to become a foster carer, we'll send you the details in an email after this about how to do that. You can have a chat with someone in our national team, or you can phone Karina, who works for me in Adelaide, and she'll walk you through the process. She'll perhaps arrange to come and see you. And also, if you feel like actually looking after a child with more complex needs might be too much, then we can talk about other fostering options as well. So there's other things we can talk about. So we'll provide you with information about fostering, including what is important to know. We'll answer any questions and we'll organise a home visit, and we'll get started on background checks and that kind of thing. Let me just see what the next slide says. So how do you become a carer? So there will be some training requirements before you are approved as a carer. And when you contact us, we can talk to you a little bit about what that involves. There's also an assessment. So there's an inquiry phase and there's an assessment phase. So in the inquiry phase, we share information with you about what fostering is, and we do background checks. So we do child protection checks, and we do working with children checks, and we do interstate checks and various things like that. And we might talk to your GP and get a health check done. So all of that stuff happens in the inquiry phase, and there's some training that goes on in that phase as well. And then once we hit the assessment phase, you'll be allocated to an assessor, and then there'll be a 5-month period where the assessment's done, and then that assessment will be submitted to CARU, which is a branch of the DCP, which is the Department for Child Protection, and they will make the decision about your approval. And then once you're approved as a carer, you'll be passed over to the foster carer team within LWB, and then they will look to make a placement with you, a well-matched placement. Just in terms of that matching process, so what we do is we get referrals from the DCP about young people that need to be looked after outside of the family home, and we look at the needs of those young people, and we try and match that with the abilities and the skills and the availability of carers that we've got available, and we try and make as good a match as we can, because we want those placements to be successful. So we're not in the business of placing children with people who we know can't meet the needs of those children. We wouldn't do that. So we'd have a conversation with you about any possible placements. All right. Any questions? Our most frequently asked questions. So, I'm single, can I foster? Well, yes, you can. Families come in all shapes and sizes, as do our foster families. We are a same-sex couple. Can we foster? Yeah, we've got many same-sex couples fostering for LWB. Okay, can I foster even though I don't have my own children? Yeah. We know that having experience interacting and caring for children is useful when new to fostering, but that can be gained in many ways other than parenting. Even if you've never cared for children, having personal attributes that would make you a good carer is what we are looking for. So, do I need to have a spare room? In most instances, yes, you would, yeah. Do I have to own my own home? No. However, you need to demonstrate that your premises are safe and suitable to foster. You can be renting in public housing, paying off your home, or own your home outright. Can I have my own children and foster other children? Yeah, you can. Your family situation is considered when making decisions about the age and needs level of children you may foster. Generally speaking, children placed with caring families will be younger than your own children, normally by a couple of years. Will all family be involved in the assessment process? Yes, everyone in the household will be part of the assessment process. It's important to make sure everyone knows what fostering is and is on board with the decision to apply. Okay, how are children matched to foster carers? Yeah, so I kind of touched on that a little bit earlier. So if you're a newly approved foster carer and you've got a space in your home for a young person, and we get a referral through from the DCP that we think may be a young person that you might be able to look after, we'll have a conversation with you and discuss that. And then if we all agree that it looks like it could be a good idea, then we'll let the DCP know, and then they will make a decision about who they want to place that young person with. Can I choose the age and gender of the child? Yeah, I mean, what I would encourage you to do is have a conversation with the people when you're coming through the inquiry and the assessment phase to discuss what's going to work best for you. I'd encourage you to be as broad and as open as you can be in terms of your preferences and who you feel that you can and can't look after, and the assessor will help you work that out as well and work that out for the assessment process. But we can certainly keep that in mind. Do children in care have ongoing relationships with their family? Yes, in most cases. We know that maintaining connection with family in whatever way possible is part of ensuring good long-term outcomes for children in care. So our care teams will help you find the best ways to support family relationships and ensure it is safe for all. What happens if the placement isn't working out? Well, stability is the key for children in order to do well and thrive. It's not in the child's best interest to move continuously. So we need resilient carers who are able to work with our care teams to push through the harder days. If ending a placement has to happen, we'll always be there to make sure goodbyes are done well and support you and the young person in that situation. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit earlier. How long does the assessment process take? So the assessment part of the process is no longer than 5 months. The inquiry side of things could be 5 or 6 months itself. It just kind of depends how long it takes for paperwork to be completed, checks to come back. There's a few variances in there, so it's difficult to pin down exactly, but 5 or 6 months probably for that side of things as well. And then we have to wait for CARU to sign things off at their end, which could be another 2, 3, 4 weeks. But obviously, if you start the process and then your circumstances change or you need to have a little break for a while, talk to us. We can put things on hold. We can pick things back up at a later date. We don't need to, go through it all at the same time if things change. About the support. Just before we get to that, Kristy, have we got any questions we need to answer, or how are we looking? Oh, you're on mute, Kristy.
Sorry, there is some in the Q&A and in the chat box.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So one is, what if you have a pet dog? So that's part of the assessment will be talking to you about the dog, what the dog's personality is, I guess, and also just ensuring that you have somewhere that the dog can actually be separated from children. So even if your dog is safe, like if your dog wouldn't hurt a child, sometimes these kids can actually hurt your dog, your animals. So it's really important to be able to commit to supervising them whenever they're together, and when you can't supervise, that they are actually able to be shut in separate kind of spaces.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh,
What happens if sharing a house with others? Yeah, difficult one to answer without knowing too many details about that, but have a chat with us about that and we can explore that a little bit and see what that looks like. I mean, that could be difficult, but we'll have a look at that. Do we get to do trauma-informed practice training after being given the green light but prior to receiving a child or young person? I think if you were coming to us with an idea of being a specialist foster carer, we'd try and get some give you access to trauma-informed training within the inquiry and assessment space prior to being approved. So yeah, we'd certainly look at trying to get you some training prior to having a young person placed with you. Was there anything, did you say in the chat box, Kristy? I've only got the key.
yes. So one person has said, when you say complex needs, it means children with disability. So yeah, it can be disabilities, it can be like developmental delays, or it can just simply be extreme behaviours that come from trauma. Or a combination of those that makes it complex. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
So are they under NDIS?
A lot of them are. Depends if they have a diagnosis, doesn't it?
Yeah, so for some young people that will be the case, and probably young people it won't, but yeah, like Kristy says, a lot of time that goes hand in hand with a diagnosis. So yeah,
and that's part of the advocacy that you may need to do, is helping to get funding for their needs.
Okay, right, let me just get back to the
someone's asked about they haven't got an extra room. How can I go about it? So yeah, that
would be difficult without
someone specifically as to how your house is like laid out, whether you can create an extra room, but maybe you're more in a position at this time to do like mentoring with a foster child, where you actually spend time with them each fortnight as an extra safe adult in their life, without actually having them sleep at your house, because they really do need their own private space.
yeah.
Unless is it under 2 can be in the adult's room in a cot?
Yeah, I think if your child's still in a cot, if the child's still in a cot, they could still do that potentially, but it's more ideal if there is a separate room. Somebody's asking about what we mean by regular income. So do I have to go to work, but what about the child? Yeah, a bit of a tricky one. I think it's about how we rely on I think we do have some foster carers that work alongside being foster carers. We have some foster carers that don't. There may be gaps, I suppose, is what we're getting at. So there may be periods of time where you don't have a young person in your care, and then I suppose it's about how you would manage during those times. That's just something you need to think about, I suppose.
Yeah.
And someone's asking about, is it possible to have a face-to-face meeting? Yes, absolutely. Contact us, and if you have a chat with Karina, who works for me, she'll make contact with you and arrange to come out and see you. Not a problem. And the details will all be in the email that you receive after this. So, in terms of support that you would get from us as an agency, just get my cursor back on the right screen.
Someone's asked about if they have a medical issue, will that stop them from being able to be a foster carer?
Yeah, not necessarily.
It needs to be discussed, doesn't it?
Yeah, that would have to be looked at. We'd obviously write to your GP, and they'll obviously give us a bit of an indication as to whether they feel it would be a barrier to being able to look after a young person or not. But no, I would say not necessarily. Certainly something we could have a look at.
This is where it's worth discussing with someone in person your exact situation, because there's so many different ways of being involved in foster care. You might not be able to commit to long-term full-time care, but you might be able to do respite care once a month on a weekend, or the mentoring that I mentioned earlier, or maybe you can do it and it's not an issue.
No, it's a good point, Kristy, because I think we've obviously had a focus on specialist complex needs type of care tonight, but like Kristy says, there are other types of foster care that we do, and to be honest, there's just as much a need for that type of care as any other type of care. So just give us a call and we can talk you through that as well. But in terms of support that the agency supplies you with, can be difficult to comprehend the experiences children bring with them. So we'll provide ongoing training. I think Kristy will testify that training is regular and hopefully really good. We have a 24/7 on-call support service manned by social workers within our organisation. We provide financial reimbursement for looking after young people. We have specialist support, so everyone will be allocated their own social worker, and there's also clinicians and living arts and various other groups within LWB that will help you look after young people. Where we can, where there's capacity, we provide respite support, and we also provide lots of opportunities for carers to meet together and spend time with each other and offer that peer support. And that, the foster carers, I think they're the only guys who really have a real understanding and appreciation of what it's like to be a foster carer. So I think it's really important that they get to spend some time together and share those experiences and talk to each other. So there's also a diagram there in the corner about a mockingbird. It's called the mockingbird model. That's a new way of doing things that we're doing at the moment, which Kristy's involved with. It kind of speaks to the idea of it taking a village to look after a child. You may have heard that saying before. It's about grouping a few foster families together and creating a central hub. Kristy is a hub home provider. So there may be opportunities further down the line to be involved in that. It's not a given. It's not something that all carers are able to be involved with. So I wouldn't want to promise you that, but it might be something that you might be able to explore further on down the line. Okay, so you'd get, in terms of additional support for children with complex need, you'd have more frequent visits from your supervising social worker. They will differ from place to place, but depending on the individual needs of the child, some common supports might include additional training, specialist therapeutic supports, increased or specialist respite, enhanced financial support, and support to access schemes such as NDIS. So where to from here? So what we'll do, I'd encourage you all to have a look on our website. You'll find a lot more information about LWB on our website. Good place to start. We'll also contact everyone that's attended tonight with some links to the video that didn't work. Sorry about that again, guys. And also some information about next steps if you wanted to find out a bit more, or talk to us about the next steps about how to become a foster carer. If you decide not to do anything more after tonight, that's also fine. If you want to share any information with family and friends, that'd be great. But I just want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your busy evenings to just come and learn a bit more about fostering. I think that says a lot about you as people, to be honest. So thank you for that. That pretty much concludes our presentation for this evening. So if there's any other questions, we're happy to have a go at answering them. But if
there is another question that's come up about financial assistance or funding. So the general placements, there's a smaller financial contribution that helps to cover the costs of the child itself, food, clothing, those kind of things. And then with a specialist payment, it is higher because there are higher costs with trips to hospital and lots of driving to therapies and all that sort of stuff. And it also acknowledges that you will be less able to work and earn money, so the payment is higher. Depending on your personal income, you can probably apply to Centrelink for family assistance payments for the child as well. So that's also helpful.
That's great. Thanks, Kristy. Well, not sure if there's any other questions for anyone.
Doesn't look like it.
If you haven't, no. Okay, well, I have 52 goats and 4 dogs. I'm so happy that it was happy and healthy environment. Dogs are contained. It was nice and loved that. The right interaction took place. Yeah, well, yeah, we'd certainly come and have a look at all your goats and your dogs. But I'm sure it'll be fine. So, thank you everyone for your participation tonight. We've really enjoyed it, and it's been great to have you all along. And like I said, if you decide not to progress any further, that's absolutely fine. And if you do, then I look forward to meeting you somewhere on your pathway to become a foster carer. I'm sure we'll meet along the way somewhere. Thank you, Kristy, for your time this evening. I really appreciate your input. Yeah, I'd just like to.
Another question's popped up as well, Mike.
Yeah.
If we have more than one room, can we have more than one child come live with us? So
Absolutely.
yeah, when you're being assessed, it'll be decided how many children you're approved for. So we've got 2 spare bedrooms in our home, and we have been approved for 3 children, as long as 2 of those are siblings of a similar age that can share a bedroom. So yeah, definitely, if you've got multiple spare bedrooms and the capacity to care for more than one child, then yeah, it's fantastic when siblings can be kept together. Yeah. I am in my early 60s. Am I too old to foster? No, it's really about how healthy you are, how much energy you've got, the enthusiasm you have. Yeah, we've definitely got carers that are in their 60s, yeah, that are doing an amazing job.
Is it possible to move interstate with a long-term placement? Yeah, I'd say so. We're obviously a national organisation, so you know we can hook you up with a fostering agency wherever you decide to end up. I think you'd probably need to have. I say that. I think you need to have conversations with the DCP, and there may be requirements in terms of maintaining family contact that you need to consider. Yeah. So I think that would be the main thing that you'd have to sort out first. But from our point of view, we'd be able to support you wherever you are, but the DCP might want to talk to you about how you're going to maintain family contact.
Can we take a child overseas on holidays? Usually yes, but it has to be well planned in advance. DCP wants to know exactly where you'll be and when. You have to wait for DCP to organise the child's passport, which can take 12 months. So it's a very slow process. And depending on the family's involvement with the child, sometimes they have to give permission for it to happen and sometimes they won't. But a lot of carers do take their children overseas. The biggest frustration is getting the passport in time.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting early would be the advice on that. Start conversations early with the DCP if you've got ideas about going abroad. It's certainly possible, but these things sometimes take a bit of time to sort out. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah. Can we use a babysitter sometimes, or would they have to have been through the checks and everything? So yeah, we have safe people in our life, in our support network that we absolutely trust. They have working with children checks to make sure they are completely safe people. But yeah, then, you know, if a child wants to have a sleepover at a friend's house, then it kind of comes down to your discretion as to whether that's safe for an occasional thing. Yeah, and the babysitter is that similar kind of thing where if you choose to entrust the child in that in the care of that person, the buck stops with you, basically.
That's great. All right, I think the questions are perhaps drying up, are they, Kristy?
I think so.
All right, well, in that case, I'd like to thank you all for your time and enjoy the rest of your evenings. And I think that concludes our presentation for tonight. So thank you and goodbye.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks. Good night, everyone. Thanks, Kristy.